everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Alexandra, and in today's tutorial, which is, by the way, another collaborations of mine with amazing Vectoria Designs, I'm going to show you how to create this journal, notebook, stationery stand or organizer. And I'm also going to show you in the part 2 of the tutorial how to create a journal which will fit in one of the compartments of the stand. The stand has 3 compartments. This is how it looks from the side. And this is the back. I love the papers. The paper pack that I'm using for my today's project is called Vintage Library. And the pack includes 24 journal pages, with the help of which you will create the journal that I will show you in a second right here. The pack also contains 8 background papers, and I used some of the background papers to mat the sides of the stand as well as the inside panels. And one of the background pages is this book cover, vintage book cover print, which is absolutely amazing. And I think that any journal that you add this page as a front cover will definitely look vintage, and it will look gorgeous. So the next thing that the paper pack includes are 6 sheets of printable ephemera, and when you cut them out, you can use them for embellishing either the pages of your journal, or like in this case, I cut them out and used them on the front panel of the stand to make it look interesting. So let's have a look at the inside of the stand. So at the very bottoms there, I didn't use patterned paper. As you can see, it is just craft paper in there, but on the panels here and also on the sides and on the backs of the dividers right here, I used one of the background sheets from the Vintage Library paper pack. And I must say that this background paper is one of my favorites in this pack. I absolutely love collaged library cards and different scripts, and even I can see here there is a front cover of the studying book, probably for calligraphy. So really it's just amazing. And I want to say that the size of this stand is so convenient. It is not super big, but it is not small, so it can fit any of the journals that you create with the paper packs from Vectoria Designs. So the width of the stand is slightly over 6 inches or 15.5 centimeters. The height is 4 3/4, which is about 12 centimeters tall. And each one of the compartments is, well, this one at the back is 2 inches deep, and each one of the remaining ones is about 1.5 inches wide. So 5 centimeters, 4 and 4. Okay, so in my previous tutorial, which was also a collaboration with Vectoria Designs, we created this Discover the Woods journal, and I just want to show you how it fits this stand as well. So that means that you can basically fit both of the journals in here and have this compartment for some smaller receipts or cards or anything you'd want to have on your table. Easy to reach, and I think it looks really great. So yeah, let me show you the journal. Let's put these things aside for now, and I will show you the journal that we are going to create, by the way, in the second part of the tutorial, and the first part will be dedicated to creating the stand. Okay, so the journal is 5.5 by 7 3/4, or 14 centimeters by 20 roughly. The width of the spine is 1 1/4, or in millimeters it's above 3 centimeters wide. And there are 3 signatures in this journal, and as you can see, the binding looks a little bit different maybe from what we are used to see in the journals, and this is a new method of binding for me as well. So that's the first time that I create something like this. I don't know how it's called, but one of the advantages of this binding is that especially when you have a journal with a hard spine and not the soft spine, is that when you open it, the pages still lay flat, and you can easily flip through them, and you can write in your journal without having to, you know, awkwardly hold the cover at a certain angle to be able to write easily in your journal, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is the binding once again, and you can see that the pages actually stand about 3/8 of an inch away from the spine itself, and that mere fact allows them to lay flat once again. So on the inside, let's start from the front cover. Actually, on the front cover, what I did, since it was quite difficult to match the size of the background page to the size of the journal itself, you can see that I found a solution, and I just layered an additional piece of craft cardstock behind the printed vintage book cover. And I also zigzag stitched around the edges to make sure that the paper doesn't start to lift there, and I think it was quite a good solution. For now, at least, I will use the journal and see how it goes, but I think it will survive rough use as well. The same with the back. I did the same thing, printed the sheet with the book cover and glued it down to an additional piece of craft cardstock and zigzag stitched all around the 4 edges of it. The journal, the word itself, comes in the project pack, so you will be able to find it there. So I cut this word out and layered it on a piece of leather, which happened to be almost the same color as the decorative pieces on the printed vintage book cover. And then I just layered another piece of muslin there behind the leather piece, and I think it created a rather nice look. As you can see, I still have some threads fraying, but that's okay. I can pull them out and it will be okay. So on the inside of the front cover, I have this pocket that is also included in the ephemera cutout sheets. And I have a few journaling cards to which I added more of the words. You will find a lot of different words in this project pack, so you're welcome to either add it the way I did or do something else. Then here in this pocket, I added another little library pocket that was also part of the project pack, and I added a really tiny paper clip, and then added another card inside for some additional interest. Here is a piece of washi tape, decorative faux washi tape, which is included in the pack, and I secured it with a brad in there and glued it down to the whole page. And I really liked that you have 2 Ex Libris cards in the pack, so this is one of them. And once again, I just layered it on the craft cardstock and zigzag stitched all around to secure it on the page. Then it's really needless to say that the vintage feel of the journal pages is amazing, as usually with the Vectoria Designs journal packs. There was this library pocket from Chicago Public Library included in the project pack, and I just cut a slit in it and glued it down to the page only at the bottom and at the top, and then I was able to slide one of the cards inside, and I think it looks really interesting. Then part of my pages are printed from both sides, as you can see, and I explain about the way of printing the pages in the tutorial. And some pages are just plain tea-dyed printing paper sheets, and I alternated between the printed pages and the tea-dyed ones, and I think this way I will have more space for both journaling and decorative pages to embellish more. So yeah, what else we have here? So I added another pocket on this page, and this is the second signature. I don't think I added anything special to the pages in here because they are already embellished to perfection with all the digital elements that the Vectoria Designs designers have added to them. So they're really pretty, and this is the third signature, which is built the same way as the 2 previous ones. Okay, so on the back, on the inside of the back cover, I have layered a few elements from the ephemera cut out sheets, and here I just added, there was this open book, and I just added a cover to it, stamped here this flourish, and added the word soul. And this image, the circle image, is a punch from one of the, oh, I think that's the one. Yeah, this is one of the cards which is included in the ephemera pack, which is included in the ephemera sheets, and I just used my circle punch to punch this cute lady out, and I layered it with another a piece of craft cardstock and created the book, which can be opened this way. And this is the same thing. This little book is kept closed with a magnet, and then this one is kept closed with this swing tab that I attached to the page using a little brad. Okay, so that's the journal, and it goes to the back compartment right here in the stand. I also want to show you the embellishments on the front panel of the stand. I absolutely fell in love with the glasses here, and I had epoxy stickers that I purchased quite a while ago, so I thought this time it was a perfect moment for me to use them, because the diameter of the epoxy stickers was the same as the diameter of the frame, and I think it looks really pretty, almost real. Then I layered some more cutouts from the ephemera sheets, added a few metal paper clips, and this pen nib, which I both glued with glossy accents to the paper and also stitched it here in one place to the paper layer to make sure that it stays in place. And yeah, so that's the stand and the journal. I think since the first part of the tutorial is rather long, I will show you the remaining two things that go inside the stand in the second part of the tutorial. And I also want to mention that I didn't have a chance to create tutorials for both of these, since the whole tutorial was getting very long. And I think you guys, crafters out there, will be able to replicate these easily once you have the dimensions of the panels. I will show these to you closer to the end of the second part of our tutorial, and I will give you the measurements of the folio and this accordion ephemera holder, so that in case you want to recreate them, you will be able to do that. And the papers are, of course, from the same vintage library paper pack by Vectoria Designs. So let's begin with creating the stand first, and in the second part we will create the journal. I would like to create the organizer first and then get to creating the notebook. So before I explain to you how we start to put this together and give you all the measurements, I just wanted to show you how most of my projects begin. I cut out the necessary chipboard pieces, and I'm using the medium weight chipboard. You can roughly see what's the thickness of it, and then once I have everything ready to be kind of assembled, I need to visualize how my project will look like. So I use a painter's tape to hold it together and just give a final look, and also thought if everything is the way I want it to be. So let me disassemble this for now, and we will start from there. An important thing about each successful project are the measurements. So let's get to the measurements now. I will start with 5 chipboard pieces that I have right here, and we will need 2 more for the dividers in our organizer or stand, however you want to call it. So I have a part which will serve as a bottom of the organizer here, and in inches it should be 4 7/8 by 6. You can also spot some horizontal lines on this piece. The first line stands 1/2 inch away from the left hand edge of this chipboard piece, which is 3.8 centimeters. The second one is 1/2 inch away from the first, so the measurement in centimeters will be the same, 3.8. And then the distance from the second line to the right hand edge of the chipboard piece is 1 7/8 inches, or 4.8 centimeters. So let's put this piece down for now. For the back wall of our organizer or a stand, we will need a piece of chipboard which measures 6 inches on the long side by 4 3/4 on the short. For the front piece, for the front wall, we will need a chipboard piece that measures 2.5 on the short side by 6 inches on the long. Okay, and we will also need 2 identical pieces for the sides of our stand, and these will be 5 inches by 4 3/4. And you can also see that I have some guidelines already sketched on this piece, but don't mind any of them. You will just have to mark on the shorter side of this chipboard piece a tick mark that will be 2.5 inches away from the well, in this case, left hand bottom corner of the chipboard piece, and it equals to 6.3 in centimeters. Okay, so I will hold this for a second for you to have a better look at that. So this side is 4 3/4 of an inch, or 12.1 in centimeters. This side is 5 inches long, which equals to 12.7, and I have a tick mark right here, which is 2.5 inches away up from the corner of the chipboard, this corner. Okay, let me rotate so that you can see the measurements. Okay, if you are still not sure, you can just pause this video and have a better look. But the second piece will measure the same, 5 by 4 3/4 in inches. And then the tick mark here will have to be a mirrored reflection of this piece. Okay, so that when we cut off later on these corners for our organizer or stand, they will be, once again, mirrored reflections of each other. I hope this makes sense, and anyways, we are doing all the tick marks and guidelines in pencil for now, so you will be able to rectify the mistakes if there will be any later on as well. So what's important for now are the guidelines right here, and the measurements themselves for all the parts that we will be working with right now. Okay, for holding all the pieces together, we will use some simple strips of craft paper, and I have them here in different lengths. For now, I will trim them to the needed lengths as we go and as we assemble the organizer. And they are 1 inch in width, which corresponds to 2.5 centimeters. Okay, so they are scored along the long side, and I will use score tape in order to glue them down to the chipboard pieces. And just in case you wonder about the brand or the weight of the paper, this is the one that I'm using. If I'm not mistaken, it's from Joann's. It's all the information that I have on the paper. I hope this will help to some of you guys to look for the proper cardstock to use for your hinges. I wouldn't recommend using anything thicker than 65 pounds because it's kind of already on the thicker side, and we don't need that right now. Regarding the score tape, I'm using the score tape 1 1/4 inch wide. Okay, so let's begin with preparing 2 hinges that will be the same length as the length of our bottom piece, and it is 6 inches long. To the left and the right side of the score line, I will apply the score tape like so on both of the pieces, and I will fold them now, burnish to reinforce that fold, and use my scissors in order to miter the corners on both sides of the hinges so that they look like this. And when you miter that corner, please make sure that you don't cut off the length of your hinge, so that your scissors get right to the corner of the hinge and not trim any of the paper here. We need all the length of the hinge in order to cover the sides, the parts of the chipboard. Okay, now let's remove the backing off of 1/2 of that hinge and take our bottom piece that will serve as a bottom of our organizer and apply this hinge to the chipboard piece so that we don't overlap the score line, the fold itself on the hinge, so that when you fold your hinge like so, you can still have a straight angle here. Okay, let's do the same on this side of the bottom piece. Next, I will take the piece that will serve as a back panel of our stand, remove the backing from the hinge, and keep this piece in a standing position flush with the edge of the bottom chipboard, making sure that the corners meet. And while holding it like so with my hand, I will lift the hinge on the side and then flip the back panel to the working surface and burnish really good. And then you will see that you have here a spacing between 2 of the pieces, and this spacing is equal to the thickness of our chipboard. And we need this gap so that we can freely fold the chipboard pieces and keep them together for creating our stand. Okay, so let's do the same on from this side, and you can see how it looks. So it doesn't go, this side piece doesn't go on top of the bottom piece. It goes right next to it. The same way it will be on this side. I hope you can see that better, like so. And that's the start of our organizer. Now we will prepare another pair of hinges, which will be 5 inches long. Once again, we will miter the corners and, of course, apply the score tape. Fold the hinges in half like so, and then remove the backing and attach the hinge to the 5-inch side of the chipboard piece. And you know what? I thought that at a previous stage it wasn't even important where exactly the tick mark will be, because you can mark that 2.5 inch point or line after you glue this whole piece down to our base construction of the organizer. Okay, so next I will then remove the backing from the half of the second hinge. We need to know where exactly to glue this piece, and you will see that from the corner of this chipboard piece to the corner of this chipboard piece, you will have exactly 5 inches or 12.7 centimeters, not from this corner, but from this one to this one, you will have 5 inches. So in order to align this piece correctly, I would suggest that you first fold this back panel up. Okay, make sure that it looks like this, and then while you hold this and this together, you will kind of match both of those corners and make sure that this side panel gets all the way to the edge of the bottom chipboard. Okay, you will have something that looks like this, and then the second corner will kind of align itself naturally because everything is trimmed down to the size already. So we just need to start the whole process right, and that's why we form a straight angle with these chipboard pieces, and then we match them together. And then once I have that done, I can release the side panels and they will kind of flip down naturally once again. Okay, so now we will get back to the guidelines that we had on the bottom piece of the chipboard, and you will take your longest ruler and you will just use a pencil and the ruler to prolong the guidelines to your right hand side and to your left hand side, and have them on both of the side panels here. That's what I already did previously on my chipboard pieces when I assembled everything with the painter's tape. So I already have them here marked. Okay, and now if you haven't done that already, you can go ahead and create that tick mark 2.5 inches away from the corner of this chipboard piece to the right side, and 2.5 inches away from the corner of this chipboard piece to the left hand side. Okay, I remind you that this will be 6.3 centimeters away from both of the corners if you prefer the measurement in centimeters. Okay, so what you do now is you make a guideline, an additional one. Oh, I know there are too many of them right now, but I promise it will get easier. So from the top guideline that you created here, from that line to the tick mark that you marked before, you draw a guideline. You connect both of those points together like that, and you do the same on the other side. Okay, so these triangular sections will have to be trimmed off, and it's easy to do that. Just remember to protect your surface since you're using a craft knife. I would suggest to use a non-slip ruler for that, because we need to get a clean straight cut here. Okay, so you will cut this off, and you will do the same on the opposite side. And that's the shape that we're going to have right now. Okay, will be assembled like so. This is how it looks from the side so far. Okay, it is now time to get back to the two remaining chipboard pieces that we'll need for our stand. And the larger one will measure 6 inches on the long side by 4 11/16 on the short. Don't mind the shape for now, we will get back to it. And the smaller piece will be 6 inches long by 3 9/16 of an inch wide, and these will be 2 of the dividers that will go inside the stand. Okay, so I thought that it will be more interesting to have this kind of shape on the dividers instead of the straight line. So if you think that it's too hard for you to do, or you just don't feel like it, you can leave this line straight, and I think it will be absolutely fine as well. But if you want to create the same outline for the dividers in your stand, let me explain how you should do that. I will just use a plain piece of paper so that you see better what exactly I am doing. Okay, so our length of the chipboard pieces is 6 inches. That means that the half will be at 3 inches. So I will mark 3 inches from the top and the bottom, and go ahead and connect those marks so that you know exactly where your middle is. Then from either of the sides, whichever you prefer, I will mark 3/4 and 3/4 here. Connect those marks as well. Now I will mark 1.5 inch from this corner and 1.5 inch from this corner along the upper edge of the paper piece or the chipboard piece. Then I will mark 2 inches along the 3/4 of an inch line that we drew before. So 2 inches from here and 2 inches from here. And now I will connect those tick marks and draw a line here and here. And then I will use my craft knife in order to cut out this section. And then if you were really precise, you can use the template to sketch the area that needs to be cut out on the second piece of the chipboard, or you can just go ahead and repeat the sketching of the guidelines as we did on the first piece. For our next step, you will need 4 hinges that measure 3 9/16 long by 1 inch wide. The score tape will be on the outside this time, and you will miter the corners the way we did before. So you will have 4 of those hinges. And once again, they are the same length as the short side of this chipboard piece. You will also need 4 hinges that will be the same length as the side of this chipboard piece, which is 4 11/16, and they will look the same. They are scored in the center, and I applied the score tape to the outside of the hinges and mitered the corners. I will now remove the backing off one of those hinges and will match the corner of the hinge with the corner of the chipboard piece and apply it like so, so that the edge looks like this. Burnish, flip it over, take the second hinge and do the same. Flip it to the other side, and once again apply the hinges. This is what you'll have. Do the same with the hinges for the smaller divider. And this divider is ready too. This is what we have. Next set of hinges will have to be 6 inches long by 1 inch wide. We will have the score tape on the outside of all the hinges, and you will need to have 6 of them ready. Don't forget to miter the corners. So you will take one of them and apply the hinge along the long side of the divider, like this. Same thing on the opposite side here, like this. And if you see that the hinge is slightly overlapping the fold of the side hinge, just take your scissors and trim a tiny bit off to make sure that they fold at a straight angle, both of them, in all the corners. Okay, do the same thing with the larger divider. Here we go. So these guys are ready, and the remaining 2 hinges that you have, you will attach along the long side of the bottom chipboard here. Don't forget to burnish, and flip this over and attach the last hinge along the long edge of the chipboard piece that serves as a bottom of our organizer here. And as you can see, I'm making sure that the fold goes right along the edge of that chipboard, and this side chipboard piece still can be folded at a straight angle. To have the nice looking edges of the dividers, we will need to cover this raw chipboard edge with the cardstock as well. And for that, you will need, since we have 2 dividers, you will need 2 pieces of craft cardstock that measure 1 3/4 inch by 6. We need to know where exactly to start gluing them down, right? And for that, we will take a ruler, and if you have a Tim Holtz ruler, that will be great. If not, you will just have to measure 1/2 inch from this line that we had marked before. So this is how you do it in case you do not have this kind of ruler. if you do have the ruler, then just use it for drawing a guideline 1/2 inch away from this edge of the chipboard here. Okay, and then next I will just get back to my wet glue and apply it to this area right here. And I will flip this to this side. This is what it will look like on the back side. And I can already see that we need to trim this paper piece down a little bit, maybe just 1/16 of an inch, because the hinges were not folding at a straight angle, so now they are. Okay, and that means that this piece that I have here, I will trim just maybe 2 millimeters or 1/16 of an inch on the long side. And once again, I will use my wet glue to glue the cardstock piece down to the chipboard. To repeat the same shape that we have here, I will use just a template, 1/2 inch wide template that I have. If you don't have templates, you can create them. Just take the chipboard scraps that you definitely have from the projects that you have been working on before and cut a strip that will be 1/2 inch wide, and then you can use that chipboard piece for creating guidelines that we will be creating next. I will start from these angled sections first, okay, and then I will align my template along the cut edge of the chipboard and draw a guideline here. So basically this is the trapezium shape that I will need to cut out. I will do the same thing here. Next, I will make some cuts in the cardstock from this corner of the cardstock to that corner of the chipboard on both sides, and from this corner of the cardstock to that corner of the chipboard in the same manner as we did here. Same thing here. Let's do the same on this piece. Now let me show you something. I have a template right here so that you can see what I'm talking about. When you wrap the cardstock around the chipboard, you can see here that the chipboard in these areas will not be covered with any of the cardstock. That's why you will just need to use, if you are working with the black cardstock, for example, you will need to use black marker in order to color these areas here with the marker. Or since I'm using the craft cardstock, I will just go ahead and color these areas with the distress stain. This is really old. I don't think they have it anymore these days. So you can just go ahead and use your vintage photo ink, or even a darker ink probably, to brush the ink onto the chipboard in these areas that will not be covered again by the cardstock. So I will do it using the ink on this piece, or I will use my distress stain on this piece. You know what, let's make it the same on both of them. Okay, now we are ready to wrap the cardstock, and we will start from the sides here. You can, by the way, go ahead and miter the corners here just a little bit for a nicer look, but it's not 100% necessary if you don't want to do that. Okay, like so. I will fold these flaps in first, and I will also add some glue to the edge of the chipboard here so that it looks crisp after I burnish here. And then I will use my bone folder in order to burnish on the back of this piece as well. Now I will fold the central piece. Before you glue these pieces, you will just have to make sure that there are no overhangings. And here, as you can see, I have a bit of a problem on this side, so I will just go ahead and trim this piece like so at an angle, and then I think it will look better. Yeah, now it looks fine, no overhangings on the front. Perfect. So let me finish with these flaps here, and I will do the same thing on this divider and get back to you. Here they are, both of the dividers. I also went ahead and distressed the edges of both of them using the Vintage Photo Distress ink. Now would be a good moment to choose your designer papers for the project, and I remind you that for my project I'm using wonderful papers from Vectoria Designs. Very beautiful pages with the vintage images, and the sheets that I am showing you here are the background sheets, which are included in the pack. I printed a few of them, and I'm kind of choosing the ones that I would like to use right now for my dividers. I printed this sheet twice because I love it so much. That's exactly the kind of papers that I really like to use in my journals. We will need to trim it down to the size that matches the area of our dividers. So for the smaller one, in inches, you will have to cut a piece that will be 5 7/8 by 3 3/8, and that's the piece that I will use here. Now, you remember the template that we created before? So I will use this template right now in order to sketch the outline of the upper edge of my paper. And the other way of doing it is positioning it in the center of your chipboard piece first with well, roughly 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch border, depends on the size of the paper that you cut for your divider. Now I will just trace that edge there, and I will then use either a ruler, or in this case I will just use my template in order to sketch another set of lines about 1/16 of an inch away from the original one. And then I will use my scissors to cut along that second set of guidelines. I don't want to distort the paper when cutting it with the scissors, so I will go ahead and use my craft knife for this cut right here. Let's make sure that it fits. And I think it does. So now we can use this paper piece as our template for the back of the smaller divider. So let me prepare a piece of paper which will be the same as this one. And I think I will go this time with, well, maybe with this pattern from the pack. Distress the edges of those two paper pieces and glue them down to the dividers. For matting the second larger divider, you will repeat the same steps with additional two pieces of paper. And this time they will measure in inches, 5 7/8 by 4.5, and in centimeters, 15 by 11.4. You might want to trim the paper piece a little bit to make sure that it fits in between the folds of the hinges on the long side. Now when the dividers are ready, we can go ahead and attach them to the bottom of our organizer, and let me show you how you do that. So I will put my base construction on the table like so, and we'll start with the larger divider here. This is the back. I will remove the score tape from the hinge on the back of my divider, and I will glue it down right along that guideline that I have on the chipboard, starting from the corner here and matching it with the corner on the right side there. Now I can go ahead and use my bone folder to burnish on that hinge. Next, I will take the smaller divider, and that's the back side of it, so I will do the same. Our dividers are attached like so to the base construction that we have. Right now, I will need to add a few more hinges to our organizer, and the first pair of them will be 1 3/4 long in inches. So here they are. They're, as usual, scored in the middle, and I applied score tape to the outside of the hinge and mitered the corners on both of them. Now I will attach them right here. Okay, now when we have that done, I will need a piece of craft cardstock for matting the bottom of this section, and the size of this paper piece is 1 5/8 by 5 3/4. The next set of hinges that we will need for the sides of the middle and the front divider are pretty small. We will need 4 of them, first of all, and the score tape will once again be on the outside, and you will miter the corners like we always do. So the size of these hinges in inches is 1 3/8 of an inch long by 1 inch wide. Glue them down on the sides right there, but before that, let's go ahead and attach the long hinge on our larger divider. Okay, so 2 hinges will go here. These little hinges are glued in place right now, and we need to mat the bottom of the middle section and the front section. So I have prepared here 2 identical pieces of craft cardstock, and in inches they measure 1 1/4 by 5 3/4. I will go ahead and glue them down once again using my wet glue to their places like so, and get back to you. This is what we have so far. To continue, we will need again hinges, 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 hinges. That's what keeps our paper projects together. So 2 of the longer hinges that I have here are 4 3/4, well, maybe slightly less than that, 1/16 less than that. They will go right here and right here. And we will also need 2 additional hinges that will be 1/16 of an inch less than 2.5 inches to fit in these areas here. Glue these down along the edges of the chipboard side pieces, and I will actually start from this corner here and not from the inside corner over there. Same thing on this side. I will start to glue the hinge down from this corner and move my way to that corner, and I will glue this hinge the same way, aligning it first with the corner right here, and then we'll keep on gluing it down along the edge of the side panel of my future organizer, like so. Okay, now we will need to glue down these side panels of our organizer first, and then we will assemble it by folding the front and the back panels as the last step. So I will now remove the backing from the small hinges and then glue the side flaps of the dividers to those little hinges, making sure that you don't fold in the dividers themselves. Same thing on the opposite side. Now we will remove the backing from the long hinges on the sides of the dividers, and we'll start to assemble our piece. Now, before you attach these to the side chipboard piece, make sure that you see the guideline in there and that the guideline goes right against the middle of the divider chipboard piece. Okay, and the same thing here. And once you're sure that they are in place, then flip it to the side and use your bone folder in order to burnish. Now just use your scissors and trim the overhanging pieces of the cardstock, and do the same on the opposite side. If you feel like you have a bit of cardstock still showing in there, you can just use a piece of sanding paper or a sanding block or a nail file in order to sand the remaining pieces of the cardstock off. Now I will stick the hinges together in the back of my organizer, and I will remove the backing from the flaps of those hinges. And now when I'm assembling this panel, I will just make sure that I have it folded nicely there at the bottom. Make sure that it goes into that fold as it has to, and I will first catch the corner here and the corner here. I will glue the top of the hinge on the side to the back panel, and then I will flip it like so and use my bone folder in order to burnish nicely. Now let's do the same thing here in the front. And when you fold the corners, just make sure that you have a corner that looks like this. Same thing on the other side. You might need to push the hinge in just a little bit to make sure that the front panels goes in between the side panels, like so. And don't worry that it's not exactly in place, because when you apply the hinges on the outside, it will then be perfect. And these are those hinges. So both of them have to be 2.5 inches long by 1 inch wide. The score tape in this case will be on the inside, and I will apply them to these corners like so. I will glue them on the front first and then on the side. Next, we will need a hinge to cover this edge of the chipboard, and that hinge will have to be 6 1/8 of an inch long. The score tape will be on the inside, and as you can see, as usual, I mitered the corners. Before you glue it down, make sure that the flap of the hinge that will go to the inside really fits there between the side panels of the stand. If not, just miter the flap more on that half of the hinge. Okay, make sure that it fits, and I think it does. So I will start applying it from the flap that goes on the front, and make sure that the hinge goes from corner to corner like so. Burnish, providing some support from the inside. Okay, now fold the cardstock first and shape it using your hands again, or your bone folder. Okay, now I will remove the backing from the tape and add some wet glue right on the edge of the chipboard, once again just to have crisp edges. Now you can distress this edge using the ink of your choice, and we can also distress these edges here and these edges, and basically all the edges which are already covered with the hinges. Let's work now on the hinges for these sides and this edge of our stand. So these guys will have to be 4 3/4 long. I think I made a little mistake right here, and I will tell you about it. This panel actually needed to go in between the side panels, the same way as the front one did, but I think it will not be that noticeable as soon as I cover the corners with the hinges. And well, this is something that I will know about, but hopefully you watch the tutorial first and then go ahead and assemble your project. So hopefully you will not do that same mistake as I did. And even if you did, I think it will really not be that much of a problem. Okay, so I am covering the sides of the back panel with the hinges, as we already did before when we worked on the front, so I'm not explaining too much of what I do right now. Then this top hinge will be, let's see, I cut it to 6 1/8, but I think because of that mistake, it will have to be shorter. Yeah, it will have to be 6 inches long. So I trimmed it down a little bit. Now let's make sure that the half of the hinge that goes to the inside really fits in there between the side panels, and I think it does. So I can go ahead and start gluing the hinge down. The last pair of hinges that we'll need for our stand will be 5 3/4 inch long by 1 inch wide. You will apply score tape to the inside of the hinge. You will miter the corners. You will need to miter them more, but for now, do it at the regular angle as we did before. And now on the inside of the hinge where there is the score tape, I took, before mitering the corners, guys, I took the ruler and marked from this left hand side of the hinge to the right hand side. I made a mark at 2 inches on the top section of the hinge and on the bottom section of the hinge. And then I also made another mark, which is 1/7/8 of an inch away, 1 7/8 of an inch away from the first one. In centimeters, that will be, let me tell you, 5.1 roughly, and then the next one will be 4.7 from the first. Okay, so these marks will help us understand where to cut this hinge. And we will start by making a straight cut from that mark to the score line, leaving really maybe 1/16 uncut from the score line to the cut itself. And that's because we just want to attach this whole hinge right there, and I will start attaching on this side from the outer corner, like this, up to the score line on the hinge. Okay, and I can burnish here. Okay, now I will flip the whole construction so that I'm more comfortable cutting. So this line, this mark here only shows me where 2 inches are. So I can first go ahead and cut at a straight angle from that line almost up to the fold line. But you can see that this long piece is still attached to the whole hinge, and that's what we need, because we need to cover these points of connection so that they look nice in the end. So what I do now, that little piece of the hinge, I'm folding it in and working on the corners with my fingers. Now I can see how wide the angle should be for me to trim more of that cardstock so that the whole hinge goes nicely into the divider, that into the compartment that we have here. And I think that will be enough. So right now I will remove the backing and apply some glue to the edge of the chipboard, and I will go ahead and glue this first flap of the hinge down. I will burnish. Okay, next we will see where we need to make the next cut. I think we can go ahead and remove the backing from the bottom of this flap on the hinge and glue the whole piece down on the outside like so. And now we have to work on separating this flap into 2. So once again I cut at a straight angle, and now I'm working on each section separately, folding it in and checking how I need to cut the corners so that the whole flap goes into the intended for it section of the compartment nicely. Okay, so that's how it should look like. See how nice the edge looks? And we will do the same thing here, like this. Burnish again. And now you can distress this edge of the stand using the ink of your choice, and I will be back. Now let's start to mat the rest of the inside panels of our stand. The larger piece for the inside of the back panel will measure 4.5 by 5 3/4 inches. You will glue it down, leaving a little border from the top edge right here, and you can use your wet glue or score tape once again, or any other glue of your choice that you feel comfortable working with. I like to use wet glue for these steps, because if I don't attach the paper in the right spot, I still have the time to move it around. Okay, like this. Let me move it closer to the camera. Okay, so I'm aligning it at the top first, and then use my bone folder in order to glue the rest. For the sides right here, you will need 2 pieces of paper that measure in inches 1 3/4 by 4.5. And I forgot to say that, of course, I distressed the edges of those paper pieces that I'm gluing down right now so that everything looks the same. So let me glue down these guys and get back to you. All right, so the easy panels are now ready. Oh, except for this one. Here we go. This panel will have to measure the paper for this panel. I mean 5 3/4 by 2 1/4 inches. For matting the sides of the middle compartment here, you will need 2 pieces of paper measuring in inches 1 1/4 by 4 3/8. So you will take one of them and you will slide it inside the compartment and make sure that it reaches all the way to the bottom. So I'm using here a ruler just to make sure that I have it in the right place. Okay, and make sure that you center it between the dividers right here. So now hold it tight and use your pencil I might need a more precise pencil. Use your pencil to mark the line right there. When you have your line marked, you will use the ruler and cut 1/4 inch away from that line, but align the ruler along the guideline that you had. You will cut it like this. Okay, now don't forget to distress the edge, and you will then fold 2 of the paper pieces that you have like so, with their backs facing each other, and use your previous paper piece as a template for cutting the piece of the paper off the second paper piece. Distress the edge, and you can now go ahead and glue these down, leaving a little border there at the top, and that will also leave the border at the bottom. Here we go. You will repeat these steps for matting the remaining 2 angled panels of the front compartment, with the only difference that the papers now will have to measure 1 1/4 by 3 3/8. To mat the front panel right here, you will need a piece of cardstock, and I'm still using the Vintage Library paper from Vectoria Designs. So in inches, this paper piece measures 2 3/8 by 6 inches. For the bottom, I will use a piece of craft cardstock, and it will measure in inches 5 7/8 by 4 3/4. In centimeters, it's 15 by 12. I will go ahead and glue it down to the bottom of the stand. Okay, now it's covered. And the last thing that we have to do on this stand is covering the side panels with the paper of our choice. Here is the background sheet that I will use on the side panels of my stand, and I printed it out on the letter size paper, trimmed the white borders all around, and now I will cut a strip which is 4.5 inches tall. I want to put it on top of this side panel first, like so, leaving about 1/8 of an inch borders around these edges on the sides that I can clearly see now, at least, yeah? And then without moving this, or even better, I think I will add little drops of glue, barely visible in the corners, and I will glue this paper there in the corners. Then I will flip this whole piece and keep it standing on the table like so, and use my pencil to trace right against the edges of the chipboard, like so. Yeah, the neighbors are mowing their lawn, always just in time. Okay, and then I will use my ruler. I could use the Tim Holtz ruler, but it's really well used and I can hardly see the lines which are at every 1/8 of an inch, so I will use my other ruler, and we basically need to trim 1/8 of an inch in from the lines that we have there. So that's what I'll do. I will, oh, not like this, sorry. Okay, I will use my guides on the ruler in order to trim that paper. I can go ahead and distress the edges of this paper piece and glue it down to its place. And you will do the same for the opposite side of the stand. So let me just glue this piece down. Here we go. And yeah, this is the only panel which is left still not covered with the designer paper. So we will need a piece which is 4.5 by 5 7/8, or in centimeters that is 11.4 by 14.9, or 15 centimeters, about that. And I will glue it down here. This is a really sturdy piece that can be used as a standalone piece, or really serve as a stand for the journal that we are going to create in the next part of this tutorial.